So welcome to Clean Your Toilet podcast, where we discuss about cleaning your toilet. Yeah, so many of us, we clean our physical environment, right? But how many times or how often do we actually look into ourselves and clean our, emotional hygiene, right?
Mental hygiene.
Mental hygiene as well, yeah. So, so today we are here to discuss about that. And I'm Stephanie and I'm your host for today. And so today we'll be talking about the issues circling around motherhood. So basically motherhood and everything extended, right? And I have with me Ming or Ming.
Hi.
Ming, right?
She's really funny.
Yeah, so I have with me Ming. He will do his introduction.
Okay. So I'm an inner work teacher. And I'm also a businessman as well. So one of the things that when we talk about motherhood is that we have to realize that personally, this is an opinion. This is I think, being a mother itself is a very important role, and it could be one of the most important role if I were to make a comparison in the world that we live in, where we live in ranks, structures. Some people think that being a CEO is a big deal. Some people think that, just because you have you're an accountant, you're some big deal. Some people think that you're a lawyer, you're a big deal, maybe. And I think that out of all these different roles, being a mother itself is one of the most, it's one role that really demands your all.
Yeah.
And it really brings back the question about commitment. Okay, what is your commitment as a mother? What is your commitment towards yourself? Because how we relate with the world out there is also how we relate with ourselves. Put it this way, if you can't love yourself, how can you love anybody?
Yes.
You can't really love anybody. You're just trying to beg for the love that you couldn't have. So being a mother is so important also because, for those of us, who have done some work on ourselves, inner work, or dealt with our own trauma, every small thing can become a trauma. And most of our trauma already started during the 0 to 7-year-old phase.
Yeah.
So it shapes the person down the road because 0 to 7 is just a base model. And then things start repeating, things start recurring incidents, and there's really a base that a child is programmed to reference to. So I'll give you an example. If a child were to grow up in an environment where they're not loved by their parents, what happens? The child is going to start believing that he's unworthy of loving, he's unworthy of to be loved, or he start going out there to chase for love that he couldn't get from his family.
Yes, I agree.
And then, of course, naturally, as the person grew up, what will he do? He's going to treat other people the way the parents treat him because that was the only point of reference they have. Not unless if they have good models in their life. Most people doesn't have good role models in their life because they're constantly picking people who are like them.
Yeah, but but I also noticed like there are a lot of individuals who behave the opposite as what their parents treat them.
Correct.
So that could be also
correct. So just okay. So that's exactly a very important point because you either follow what your parents taught you, correct?
Yeah.
But what happens if you go against what your parents taught you? Say, your parents was abusive as you were growing up. You told yourself, say, I will never become like them. So you try your best not to become like your parents. Like you're trying to go to the opposite. But you do realize that that is a rebellion against, what the parents train them. So 如果我用中文的话这么比划you go against, right, what your parents teach you, correct? Your parents try and teach you here, then you go against, right? But you're still moving in the same one line.
Okay.
So which means you're still going against, it's not really a free will choice. You're still doing the same thing. You're doing what they taught you not to.
So you're on the same path but in a different direction.
Correct, but it's still the same path because you're still referencing based on the childhood that keeps replaying itself.
Okay.
So in that sense, we are never free, not unless we are able to get out of the wheel. WHEEL, the wheel. Getting out of the wheel so that we no longer keep playing the game, roller coaster game
Okay.
that has been repeating since our childhood.
Okay.
And this is where we begin to experience this thing called freedom, what it means to be free, getting out of your wheel.
Okay. Okay. So I thought of an analogy,
Sure.
which is like a MRT line, right? So for example, being on the same line means you're on, let's say, for example, the east-west line.
Correct.
So you're going either east or west, and then your parents are in the opposite direction of your parents. So if your parents teach you to go west, then you go east, right?
But the path is still the same.
Correct. So now you want us to change MRT line.
Change MRT line. Because you go so far, you go one end, right? It's far enough, right? What happens if you reach Pasir Ris, let's say? You still go back, because you're still stuck in the one line. Because life is constantly moving, correct? But if you constantly only move in one path, what happens? You hit the end, the extreme end of one path, then you continue.
Okay.
You continue.
So it's a linear. It's
Correct.
not like a loop.
I mean, technically it's a loop because you keep going like that, like that, like that. But if you look into perspective, it's a loop.
Okay.
It's a never-ending loop.
Okay.
So that's why we need to get out of the wheel. And that's why inner work healing is so important. And especially if, for those of you who have the benefit of doing it since you were young, it gives you great advantage to assess your own abilities and give, whereby you're not holding on to your past to shape you who you are, but you're free to be your better self.
Okay. Okay. So this sounds a bit abstract. Maybe we can try to apply it on maybe the questions that I have for you today.
Sure.
Okay, so today we are going to be talking about a few things. So like how our upbringing and trauma affect us as mothers. Also why women feel stuck. And also how motherhood shapes our identity or even removes it. Okay, so the first question I have for you is how does our upbringing and trauma actually affects us as mothers? Like how much of our parenting is a reaction to how we were raised? Either we overcompensate or repeat the same patterns. So just now we mentioned something like a linear line, right? So I just wanted to know, like, if you feel most parents actually parent from unhealed trauma, like 就是心里有一个结，可是没有 they never heal from it. And then they kind of like project this unhappiness, or they have a preconceived notion that motherhood or being a parent should be like that. I should scold my kid, or I should expect a certain thing of my children. Yeah. So how much of that comes from unhealed trauma?
Well, I laugh because you kind of asked me 6 different questions at the same time.
It sounds like the same to me.
And, we should really begin to answer some of this thing. When we don't heal our traumas, the way we respond to the world is going to be based on your past, because you're using that as a base reference. Okay, and most people are totally unconscious about it. They're not aware of it, and it just keep playing out in loops. So they keep attracting the same kind of people in a relationship. They keep doing things the same way and expect people to behave differently. But they don't realize that what they are doing is a replay of a tape that was already constructed when they were a kid. So you asked me to what? I mean, you asked me a lot of questions, but to really answer it, of course, it's going to shape the way you raise your children, right? Because when you were a kid, this is what you learned from your own mother. This is what you saw your own mother doing it. So you can either accept that as a natural behavior and you treat it the same way, or you rebel against that. But either way, it's still the same choice. Then you're not really free. You're just playing out the generational patterns that keeps running in the family system.
Okay.
So that becomes a shadow if it doesn't get cleared out. And of course, most people, there's to be positive light, right? So they try to repress issues. But the more you repress issues by Newton's third law, it will always create a reaction force. So let's change our perspective. What if our reaction on one hand is coming from our trauma or unhealed wounds? So we react because, we're in pain. But what if another perspective to answer reaction is all your reaction tells you where your traumas are?
Okay.
If you know and if you're conscious and aware of how you react, it shows you the map of your own trauma.
Okay.
It tells you where you were wounded and what needs to be healed.
So, for example, if a child always reacts to being accused of something, right? That's because of a trauma that has happened in the past.
Yeah, when the mother or father accuse them of doing something that they did not do, and then no matter how they say, and then they just didn't listen. So many ways that it can happen, correct?
Yeah.
So what happens subsequent to the child? The child grew up, feeling that the world is always against them. So they always try to either over explain, being defensive, or counter react before, people can make them wrong.
So for a behavior like that, like how can we, manage it to break the pattern?
Heal the trauma by realizing that the trauma isn't present time issue, but it's a replay of the past. And what was the specific past that lead to the moment that they are now?
And how does the healing happen?
The healing happens when you do inner work to heal that trauma, to let go of it. Because at some level, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually, or energetically, they're still holding on to the events that happen in their life.
Okay.
And they're still feeding energy into it, which is why most people doesn't have enough energy when they woke up. A question they don't ask, you see, people tend to look outside for answer. When there's something wrong, they always say, outside is a problem. That person is a problem. Oh, I didn't get enough sleep because I need to do work. No.
Yeah.
You can sleep for 4 hours and you're still feeling energetic. You can sleep for 18 hours and you still feel really tired because it's irrelevant to the number of hours. It got to do with where your energy is going into from a mechanical point. If your energy is going into holding on and fixating the traumas, then you're still feeding energy into that tape such that the looping of the film keeps repeating in your life. And that is madness. Because how can you expect a different results when you keep doing the same thing over and over again? But it's not like you don't realize that you're doing the same thing over and over again. It's just that choice of option is not even accessible to you because of the way you're binded by your past.
Okay.
In other words, what we are really doing in inner work, motherhood or identity, is really about detaching yourself from all these roles that we have come to associate our identities with. And when we are free from that, we begin to have more space for more things in our life. For example, what matters to us? What truly matters? Okay, we're not living the dreams of our parents.
Yeah.
The unfulfilled dreams of our parents get passed on to us. We no longer need to replay their script. We are free to create our own script and to become the person that we were meant to be. And in my world, that is what freedom is. And of course, this is just personal freedom. What happens if every individual in the lifetime, they are free? Then we begin to look into this thing about what it means to be collectively free.
So do you mean to say that we are all born with a specific nature or a behavioral pattern or like a personality? Are we born with them or?
But as far as we're talking about, we're talking about conditioning, programming, your environment programs you, your parents also programs you, So given your question, is there a fundamental first nature or personality that the child have? I'd like to say there is lah. Because even though you can learn all these things, it is again building things based on the original model.
Okay.
And of course, if you want to take even step before, my question is, why did you even choose your parents to be your parents, even before coming to this world? Why of all parents that you can choose, you chose them? So the real question isn't why are they your parents? The real question will be, what is the lesson I'm supposed to learn? What is the karma and dharma I have with them? What is the relationship that I need to build within myself? Because it can go positive, it can go negative. Even a negative experience, when it's taken with the right attitude, it can become a blessing.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have opinions about, okay, things doesn't go their way, it must be bad. Sometimes things doesn't go your way, so the better things can come.
Mm. So you actually talk a lot about like inner work and how we can use.
Yeah, because your question is,
Yeah, so like how we can use healing our past to actually prevent ourselves from passing on the trauma to our children, right? So if I may just ask, what does inner work healing look like? Like so is it like a session or is it like a journey and then...
You see, most people think that inner work, right? You do a class and then that's it. You do a 3-day class, 5-day class, 7-day class, 13-day class, and then your life get fixed. No, it's not. It's an ongoing process. The moment you're still breathing, your work hasn't finished.
Yeah.
Your work only just started. So when you do inner work with me, your life work has just started. Your personal mastery, your commitment to yourself has just started only. It doesn't end after the 7th day. It doesn't end after the 13th day. It finishes when you have finished what you came here to do.
So we actually experience trauma every day, right? I just thought of this question, like, because you said that it's an ongoing process, and I believe that we do experience some kind of trauma every day, either from people's reactions towards us or people's words that are said to us, right? But why is it that childhood trauma has the most impact in most people?
Because just as I said, your child trauma is the base model that you're operating on since you were a kid, which means just visualize it's a tape. You were the one that put together the tape from all the things that you received from your parents or you didn't receive from your parents. As a child, your father and your mother are literally your world. In other words, you look at them literally as your world. What happened if your father one day come to you and drop the bomb saying that he doesn't love you, or you're picked up from a rubbish bin?
垃圾桶捡来的.
It cracks the psyche of a person because that was literally your worth, and you're saying that your worth is nothing more than the rubbish in the rubbish chute. It shatters their self-worth and the way they relate themselves. Over time, you see, when a trauma happens, they are conscious of it. But over time, they forgot about it. It becomes unconscious. So they keep playing on the same thing again and again. So no matter where they go, they realize that how come they don't feel happy? How come they don't think of themselves as highly? How come they don't treat their work with more value, more respect? It's because they don't think they deserve. And when we do inner work, we find out the root cause because 斩草除根是嘛。如果要解决一个问题，要斩草除根 you eliminate the root cause if you want to solve a problem. Then it boils back to the whole thing again. Where does it lead you? Go back to yourself. So your external world is a reflection of your internal world. No matter where you go, you can't run away from your own shadows. Your unresolved issues it continue to stay within you. And you have to be sure, because most people tend to blame their issues as external problem.
Most people.
But they don't realize that life doesn't come at them. Life comes from them.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, it's a lot to digest and process.
Got it.
Yeah. So, okay, so now that we have talked about a lot of our childhood stuff, right? I want to talk about also why many women feel stuck. Because actually a lot of times in the course of my work, I realized that many women, they actually want to make their lives better, but they feel stuck because of circumstances. And I think just now you also mentioned that they start to blame the external environment. So which is why some women or some mothers probably blame, their husbands for not being supportive, right? So I just wanted to ask, what do you think is really stopping women from achieving from chasing their dreams even? So is it because of mom guilt, or is it because of something deeper than that, whether it's like fear of failure or fear of judgment?
I can't really answer that because I'll be speaking on behalf of all the women in this world.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth to be told is everybody's circumstances are different.
Yeah.
But the question is, why is your circumstances a big deal? It's really because you feed a lot of energy into it. So it becomes so real to you that you believe that if you don't have those circumstances, your life is going to get better, which is a fallacy. Your life gets better when you're able to make a choice to take action right now to change something that is upsetting you, to make positive affection.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about the mother's guilt.
Yeah.
The mother's guilt to the child, especially if they can't provide the child based on the role. But if you want to look at this, you must look at it from a collective role perspective, because a mother is a role. It doesn't define who you are as an individual.
Yes.
Are you able to separate your role, your identity of a mother different from you? Because if you can create that separation, it allows you to have the fluidity to jump in between roles. Most people, after they become a mother, their identity and their role of a mother and themselves have already become entrenched.
Yeah.
So they see themselves as a mother, but they don't see themselves as, for example, 孙燕姿, right? She identifies herself as a mother because that's something very close to her.
Yes.
But there needs to be a separation. Because when there's a separation, you can jump into other role, you can jump into other role, you can jump into other role. Because this is not your only role. You're still a daughter to somebody, you're still a CEO to somebody, then you're a singer to somebody. It creates different role, different facade. It allows more expansion and stretching of capacity with very clean clarity, whether it's emotionally or mentally.
Okay.
We are able to define the boundaries of each thing.
So society actually we are always the default parent as mothers, right?
I see.
Yeah. So,
interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
People never talk about fatherhood as much as motherhood.
Maybe the guys are not so outspoken.
No, because it's a role thing. That from a societal point, we have really come to a consensus reality that the role of a mother is to make sure that the children are taken care of. And then the role of a father, there's a unsaid consensus reality that the role of a father is to go out and make money and bring the bread and butter home back to the family. And that is unsaid consensus reality that we have already agreed on even as a child while watching your parents. And how do your parents learn that? Because their parents would learn it from their own parents. So we call that a whole generational consensus reality that was really built. But is that really true? These days, we see women stepping out to build a career of themselves, and we are seeing more men taking the role of a father in a different way by taking care of their children at home. Which people will associate that more of a role of a mother rather than a father.
Yes.
So that's what I'm trying to say. We need to define each of these roles and the responsibility that comes with it. And we must always examine and ask ourselves this question: where did it come from? Who said that it must be this way? We must be unafraid to challenge the norms and the theories that are set up. Because how do you really know that it's really true? Just because everybody is doing? Most people are doing the wrong thing. That's why we call it the mess.
So how can we challenge the norm?
By having more self-awareness to confront yourself, to examine things. By being curious and making inquiry rather than conclusions. Most people jump to conclusions. They're not willing to change anything that threatens their comfort zone. What do? They reject it.
So let's say for me, right, I try to challenge the norm of being a default parent. But then I realized that when I chase my dreams, or so-called I start to do the things I love, I actually add on to my own roles. So other than being the parent, the default parent, the mother role that you mentioned, right? I start to add on more roles. Okay, I love singing, so I add on. Okay, and then maybe I need to do some exercise, so I just want to add on that to also my tasks, or my list of tasks that I want to do for that day.
Yeah.
And so instead of like a restructuring, it becomes more like an added responsibility, an added list of things I need to do.
Okay. So the issue with that is because you're adding things into the list, but the list is not categorized based on roles. So if you want to create roles, you create categories as a subheading, and then you fill in the tasks based on each thing so that you have clarity on this is for this role, this is for that role, this is for this role, this is for that role. Most people doesn't even have a categorization or grouping system. They lump everything, they conflict everything, thinking that it's convenient, thinking that it looks simple. That's why there are many mess out there. People conflict things, people make it convolution.
Yeah, so I think back to mom saying that they always don't have time, right? Is that also like an issue with how we categorize the task under each role, like you mentioned? How can we, sort of like manage this time that we have on hand and still, kind of like care for our family, but still pursue the things that we desire, and our hobbies as well.
So again, I'm going to say this. I can't really speak for the woman because I'm not one and I'm not a mother as well.
Okay, so can end already.
But I can give you a perspective. Okay, since I work with a lot of women, okay, we will always have the same amount of time. Doesn't matter what role you play in, whether you're a CEO of a company, you're a mother or whatsoever. Okay. Again, consensus reality, that's 24 hours a day. Okay. So the question is always how you want to make use of it. And a more effective way, like I said, is to create structure, is to create groupings. Because it gives you clarity what needs to be done in each of these roles.
Yes.
Most people doesn't have a system. They think that they are unique, they think they're special, they think that they know what they're doing. They don't. If somebody say that they know what they're doing, you can ask them this question. If you're really that smart, are you rich? Because if you're not, how can you claim that you're smart? But wait a minute, how do you know that you're smart? Oh, because your school tells you that you're smart because you have many A's in your paperwork. But your school doesn't prepare you for these roles. The school only prepared you for the worker role. To be able to follow instruction to be useful in this economy. But it doesn't prepare you in the role of a mother, for example, that we are talking about. Therefore, your only reference point of being prepared for the role of your mother is to watch your own mother. Which is why many people realize that motherhood is so freaking challenging. Because your mother's was not trained to be a mother as well. It get passed on. So I'll give you an analogy. So there's this particular family itself. The way they eat steak, the way they eat the steak is that they will always cut 4 corners before they put it on the pan. So you have a piece of steak. They cut 4 corners, then they cook it. So one day the daughter got curious. The daughter went to the mother and asked the mother, "Mom, why do you do that? Why do you waste the steak? Why do you have to cut 4 corners and put it onto the pan?" To her disbelief, the mother said, "I don't know." So the mother decided to call the grandmother to find out why. So the mother go and ask the grandmother, "Ma, why do we always cook the steak by cutting 4 corners and then putting it into the pan?" The grandmother said, "I don't know. Let me call my own mother." So the grandmother called the great grandmother.
Okay.
Great grandmother, or mom, why do you cut the steak 4 corners before putting it onto the pan? So this was her reply. Because there was not enough size for the pan. Because in the past, we used the size of the pan was like this. And we couldn't fit 1 steak. That's why we had to cut 4 corners of the steak and then put it inside. But today, all the pots are not this size anymore. It's this size. So why are we doing things the same old way that we were taught without examining whether is it still relevant? It sounds very simple, isn't it? It sounds very relevant, but how many people actually stop for a moment in their life to really question their assumptions? To really re-examine their own thought process that they are not logical. That most people think that they're logical, but they are not. They act out of emotions and feelings. And there's no regulation to that.
Okay.
I'm saying that the society is kind of designed and catered to make people stupid so that people can continue to be stupid. It's not meant for people to be awake. Because people who are awake will realize that that system doesn't serve them. It threatens their own consciousness.
Okay.
And that's why it's very easy to identify black sheeps, people who don't really quite fit in the society. But I'm not talking about not fitting as a form of, trying to stand out. But I'm talking about you are already free and people could tell that there's something different about these people because they don't talk or behave like their own group of people or their masses. Most people are afraid of being themselves or being unique or being in their own light, in their own gift, whereby they want to just be like somebody else. But you can't really be somebody else. You can only be you at the end of the day. That's your only choice. You become the best version of yourself. Then the question is, what is the highest self that you can become?
Wow, that's a very deep question to think about.
And we have to, because we don't have time. In a blink of eyes, you're going to die. And then the question comes, did you fulfill your roles? Did you fulfill your duties? Did you live your life doing what truly matters to you? And if you didn't, then come back again, no? Repeat, lo, like PSLE, lo. But is that simple?
What if come back as dog or another animal?
What animal you want to come back as? Dog?
I think dog not bad.
You want to be a dog?
有人疼嘛. But I think, right, other than, like having our own parents as a form of like a role model in our parenting life, I think now a lot of what I see among a lot of parents is they also look to social media as a form of how to be a parent, right? We compare ourselves with the influencers or the people who tend to share their journey more. So, yeah, I just thought, like, if you think, like when we mindlessly scroll social media, do you think that is like a numbing mechanism for us to feel like, hey, I'm doing the same thing as this person, so I should be fine? Or like...
but that's a very silly, illogical fallacy, what?
Yeah.
You're not that person in the first place. So what makes you think that by doing what other people are doing is going to work for you? If it works, how come everybody is not doing it? And if everybody is doing it, how come they're not succeeding? Because everybody is built differently.
But they look like they are succeeding, ma.
But it's an image, what? So you can pretend that you are succeeding, you can pretend that you're successful. If you're not, means you're not, what? If you are, you are. And the question is, how do we define success?
Yeah, what does success look like?
I can't define that for you. You have to define that for yourself. Okay? So problem with people is that they're too lazy to figure out their answers on their own. So they would rather copy what other people do. But, it's a dumb way. Because at the end of the day, you know what's the funny thing? Success might not be how much money you have, how many cars you own. Yeah. Success might look like
us
buying that meal for your mom that you always say you're going to do that when you were a kid. And maybe that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Maybe that's all that matters. Maybe it's not about chasing after more money, more cars, more Gucci bags, more validation, more recognition.
Yeah.
But really what truly matters to you at the core. And I'm saying that as a child, you always knew. You always knew what matters to you. It's just that you've forgotten. Along the way, you let life dictate. When I say life, I don't mean life. I mean life, the society, dictate what truly matters to you. And most people give up their dreams. They don't pursue their dreams. They rationalize about how they don't have time to do this. They can't do that. They have their roles, Oh, they are a mother now, so they shouldn't pursue. I think that's bullshit. That's your excuse. And that's why you are like that. And let me ask yourself, you're going to ask yourself as a mom, what kind of role model you want to be for your child? You want your child to be like you?
What if they say yes?
Then too bad. Then that's something that the child has to deal with. And at the end of the day, when the child grow up, he or she has to make a choice whether that's really what they want. But if a mom is not free or the father is not free, okay, from their own traumas, how can they allow freedom for the child to grow? They're going to start imposing their own framework and belief onto the child. What?
But isn't that what we are also supposed to do as parents? As to kind of like...
But I already said it. Who said that that's the right thing to do? Who told us that that's the way? Just because your parents did something doesn't mean that that's the right thing to do. What?
So you think that children are allowed free will?
I think everybody have free will. That's what I'm saying. The question is, as a child, they're kind of subjected to the words of their parents. So
True.
Let's talk a little bit about conscious parenting. Are you parenting your child consciously? Or are you just following some script that your parents, gave you or your grandparents gave you? So you think that you upbring your child, but who taught you how to upbring when you were never trained to upbring somebody? When you can't even upbring your own self, upbring means uplift, simply put.
Okay.
How can you uplift somebody if you never uplift yourself? How can you upbring somebody when you upbring, you never really question the validity of your own upbringing? So this whole game is about ending the whole generational pattern, getting off the wheel. It's about you liberating yourself so that you're free.
But I still feel like when you bring up a child, there still needs to be a certain system, right, that we need to kind of impose on them in terms of, like how Caucasian children are very free-willed, right? They just behave in any way that they want. So do you think that is the ideal kind of parenting for you, like the Western kind of parenting? Or do you feel like there needs to be some balance?
Then it's really challenging to answer this question because we have to look into the cultural programming.
Correct.
Because there's a societal programming, there's a family programming. So all the things we talk about was family programming.
Correct.
Now we take a step forward, you look into the whole bigger scale cultural thing. If you live in a culture that says that, I'm not being racist. In fact, I have a lot of black friends, but if you live in a society where they say that black people are bad, subconsciously as a child, you are already programmed into the dreaming that black people are bad, which is totally full of shit. It's a narrative that somebody made up.
Yeah.
If you look into history, there was a time where the black people was the one that run the world. So question is, can you detach yourself from your family programming, social programming, cultural programming, and to begin to embrace your own version of yourself? So that's the first step.
So you feel that it's okay to not fit into society. Let's say, for example...
Why do you need to fit in? Why do why do you want to wear somebody else's shoes? It's not a right fit, ma.
The world doesn't produce a unique shoe.
Then why don't you be the...
What shoe are you wearing?
Why don't you be the one that produce your own shoe? And the word... we're not really talking about the word. You're talking about the society doesn't produce your right size of shoe. Make sense?
Yeah.
So let's separate the world versus society because society is not the world. There are many other things beyond this social construct. But the problem comes, most people think that the society is the world. You just brought up a very important point. And they don't realize that the society is a subset of the world. And the society was created by people with walls around. By putting walls around so that you never get to see what the real world really looks like. It's a way of exerting power and control. And again, nothing wrong with that. It's a way to establish order.
Yeah.
But I'm not talking about you're not in the position to establish order. We're talking about you yourself. What does it mean to be free from this framework that's creating your depression, your misery, your suffering, so that you can be you? That's that what?
So when we compare ourselves to a particular benchmark or figure, that's where the insecurity set in.
Why would that be insecurity? Because you were insecure when you were a child. You see,
So it's not because of the comparison.
who told you to compare? When did you started learning?
Our parents.
Or because your parents compare? Okay, maybe
Right.
compare you with your cousin, or compare you with the best student next door. Well, but it's really how you take it. Or you can say lah. That's a rebellion act lah. But my point is this: you're gonna be free. You're gonna be free from all this programming. You're gonna get out of the wheel. Because when you get out of the wheel, you're also choosing to get out of your own suffering. And that's where real connection with divine begins. And if divine is infinite, why should you be constrained by social construct? Religion is a social construct. It's a system. It's created by man. Jesus wasn't Christian. Buddha wasn't Buddhist. 200 years after, Jesus died, somebody read his letters and decided to start the church. The church is a system. It's like an institution that has been formalized and accepted by the society. And there's a consensus reality that the church is a place of worship of religious. But it doesn't mean that whatever they're doing is right, because it's still set up by man, and man can only set up a system as flawless as they are, which means it's going to be full of flaws because they're full of shit. And people have agendas.
Yeah.
Whereas when we talk about spirituality, we're talking about who you really are inside, because we are all spiritual beings having a human experience.
Okay.
So we need to define the social constructs that we've taken on consciously, subconsciously, unconsciously. And the purpose of this conversation itself is really to address the everything in between. What makes you choose the choice that you make is, again, it's a condition, it's a program. And that's what inner work is really about. It's about you working through on all these different aspects of you so that you can fully get out. And naturally, if you get out and you step into the role of a mother, you're going to have clarity. You're not going to bring the past baggages of your mother, of your great-grandmother, of your great-great-grandmother, and you can look at your child for who they are, not for who you want them to be.
Yeah.
And that's where education really begins for the child. Because you're educating and being a role model to your child of what it means to be free, because you embody that. So before you want to change the world, I always say this: change yourself. Gonna ask yourself this: what is it that you want to change or make out of it?
Okay. When we change our perspective, I believe that the world also changes. Not because the world changes, but more like the way we see the world also changes. Do you agree?
Yeah, because we don't see the world for what it is. We see the world for who we are and what we are.
Okay, so how can we, like as a mom, justify the thought of wanting more than motherhood?
Why do you need to justify? What's wrong with wanting more?
Justify doesn't mean like justify to somebody else. Like justify, like how do we convince ourselves? Like a lot of parents, they don't feel like they need a reason to change. They need a reason to want more.
Be a better mom to your own children. Be a role model to the people around you. What's wrong with wanting more in the first place?
But somehow they just need to justify.
Okay, why
themselves.
do they need to justify?
But maybe someone here needs to know about
my response
this.
will still be the same. Okay. Be a better self for your own children. The role of a mother is a big one. And I want to say that it's one of the most challenging roles. Because once you understand, if you heal your own trauma, you understand that every little things that you do is going to affect the child, positively or negatively.
Yes.
It shapes the path, their destiny. So you're going to be a better mother, you're going to be a better person, you're going to be a better version of yourself. Not by societal standards, but by the standards where you're free, you're also embodying to your child as a role model what it means to be free. And I like to believe that's true freedom.
What if a mother decides that her only purpose, and her only role in life is just to be a mother.
Then do that duty well. Because in the process of doing that duty well, you start seeing your own flaws. You start asking yourself, how can I change? How can I get better? And that's how we learn. We step into the role in order to learn, in order to grow, in order to expand, in order to learn our lessons. Therefore, there's no such thing as bad.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
And everything has a start point and an ending point, and everything can be resolved. Everything can be solved in this world.
Mm. And would you agree that not wanting more is also not a bad thing?
Then my question would be, why is it that you don't want more? Because again, it's a framework of how you're being shaped. If you're being shaped of being content with having little, maybe out of the fear of the responsibility that comes with it, then you're going to keep choosing the same way, which means that you're going to train your child the same way that you're programmed. So you're just trying to produce another version of you in a child. Why should a child be born to live the life of the mother when it's the responsibility of the mother to live her own life and for the child to live her own life? And there's a saying that when the children get born in this world, the child and the children, they are the teachers of the parents. They are there to teach the parents a lesson.
Mm.
And it's important to realize that even if you are the mother of the child, it doesn't put you into a position of authority.
Yeah.
It could be a partnership.
Yeah.
Realize that your child is also your teacher. Your child is not a possession.
Mm.
It's a real human soul.
Yeah. But is it even possible for a person to be content with just having little without the negative things that you mentioned?
Sometimes less is more. So we are not in any position to say whether is it right or wrong. There's no such thing as right or wrong. There's only appropriate or inappropriate. When we still talk about right or wrong, we are still in this very dichotomy, relationship morality, whether something is good or bad or evil. But things are just what it is. It's how you interpret out of it. And your interpretation comes from the lenses that you wear and you carry. And your lenses were shaped as you were growing up. So it still goes back to your childhood, which is why it's so important to do inner work. Because how you handle yourself is how you handle everything else in life. Your business is an extension of you. How you behave as a role of a mother is an extension of you. How you manage your finances is also an extent of you. When you master yourself, you master your world. And the way you relate with each of these roles will be naturally different.
So could you explain again? If I do inner work, does it mean that I wear a different pair of lenses? Or is it that I don't wear any lens at all?
We clean your lens. We clean as much as possible until your lens become the exact lens of how the world really looks. That means you can see the world for what the world is. And that's the game.
Okay, interesting.
And this is the game changer conversation. So again, thank you for this conversation.
No problem.
What a way to finish Clean Your Toilet podcast.
Oh yeah.
So
that's
please
what
like
it essentially
it and
means.
please subscribe below. I mean, it's not planned well. It's just free flow, right?
Yeah, it's just.
But it makes sense, ma. No matter how you talk about all these questions, they're all talking about the same one thing. It goes back to yourself.
Correct.
Self-work.
Correct.
So remember to do self-work, guys. And girls.
Remember to clean your toilet bowl.
Remember to clean your toilet bowl. So why was the podcast called Clean Your Toilet? See, when you talk about cleaning your toilet, your toilet is a place where you dump shit.
Yeah.
You release stuff, you let go of things.
Yes.
Huh? How many of you clean your toilet? Many of people, ask their mother to clean for them, ask their maid to clean for them. But when it comes to cleaning their own mess, they never really know what it means to clean your own mess. Because if you don't understand what it means to clean your own mess, why are you creating issues and more issues in your life that add on to the mess? So in other words, clean your toilet is a very literal and a metaphoric way of saying it's time to take responsibility of your own life. It's time to make sure that your toilet is maintained. The place where you dump things, the place where you let go of things is maintained. And if you can do that, chances are you can do many other things, because how you do the smallest thing is how you do everything in life. But if you can't even clean up your own mess and you expect other people to clean up for you, then I'm afraid that your parenting, of how your parents train you, hasn't been so well. So let this be a awakening call that, there's more you can do in life. So remember to clean your toilet.